Have you ever met someone who didn't need to raise their voice to make you feel heard? Someone whose presence felt like calm, not because they had all the answers, but because they weren't trying to control the moment? Welcome back to Psych Bites, where we explore the quiet truths behind connection, behavior, and what makes us feel truly safe with someone. Today's video is all about one of the most misunderstood and yet powerful traits in human relationships, emotional maturity, or more specifically, 6 rare signs of emotional maturity that most people completely miss. Because here's the thing, emotional maturity doesn't always look like what we think. It's not loud, it's not charismatic, it's not about never having big feelings or always knowing what to do. No. Emotional maturity shows up in the pauses, in the silence after a triggering comment, where someone chooses not to lash out, in the ability to say, "I was wrong," without spiraling into shame, in the strength it takes to walk away from drama, not because you don't care, but because you do, just not in a self-destructive way. The truth is, most of us were never taught what real maturity looks like. We were taught to equate age with wisdom, intellect with insight, politeness with emotional health. But emotional maturity? It's deeper. It's the foundation for safe relationships, clear communication, personal peace. And yet, most people never learn to recognize it, especially in themselves. So today, we're going to slow down, and we're going to look at the 6 subtle, powerful signs that someone is emotionally mature. Traits that won't always stand out in a crowd, but will always make you feel safe, seen, and grounded when they're present. By the end of this video, you'll not only know what to look for in others, but you'll begin to recognize these traits in yourself, or the places they're still waiting to grow. Let's get into it. Because emotional maturity isn't a personality type, it's a daily choice. And in a world full of noise, those who've made that choice, they speak the loudest by saying the least. It might sound simple, but in a world that rewards instant reactions, quick comebacks, and fast takes, the ability to pause is radical. Emotionally mature people don't just respond, they reflect first. They make space between what they feel and what they say. And in that space, they protect relationships, preserve dignity, and make wiser choices. Think about it. When you're triggered, when something hurts, offends, frustrates, your nervous system wants to do something. Fight, flee, defend, prove. And most people go with that first wave. The snappy reply, the passive-aggressive jab, the cold silence, the heated argument that spirals out of control. But the emotionally mature person, they don't pretend the feeling isn't there. They acknowledge it, and then they breathe. Instead of reacting from fear, ego, or past pain, they ask, what's actually going on here? Is this about them, or is this touching something deeper in me? Will what I say right now build connection or break it? This pause isn't weakness, it's power with humility. It's self-regulation in action. It's choosing to honor the relationship and your emotional truth at the same time. Psychologists call this response flexibility, the ability to slow down your emotional process enough to consider options. It's one of the key traits linked to resilience, healthy attachment, and long-term relationship satisfaction. And it's so rare, because most of us were raised to believe that faster equals stronger. But the emotionally mature person knows faster often means less aware. So when you're with someone who doesn't interrupt, doesn't escalate, and doesn't weaponize your vulnerability in the heat of the moment, that's emotional safety. That's maturity. They don't run from discomfort. They sit with it. They don't have all the answers, but they give space for better ones to emerge. And when you learn to do this yourself, to pause, to notice, to respond instead of react, you stop being ruled by the past. You start creating space for peace, not just performance. That's not just emotional intelligence. That's the beginning of wisdom. One of the most striking signs of emotional maturity is this: the ability to say, "I was wrong," without collapsing into guilt, defensiveness, or self-punishment. It's rare, Because for most people, admitting fault feels dangerous, like opening the door to rejection, like letting someone else hold the sword over your head. But emotionally mature people understand something deeper, that owning your mistakes doesn't make you weaker, it makes you trustworthy. They don't need to be perfect to be lovable. And because they hold that belief, they can apologize from a place of groundedness, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but because it's the right thing to do. You won't hear dramatic self-blame. You won't see them spiral into shame. They won't make the moment about their pain or your forgiveness. They'll say things like, "I didn't handle that well. I can see how I hurt you. You were right, I wasn't really listening." And then they change. Because ownership for them isn't just about words. It's about responsibility followed by repair. Emotionally mature people understand that their actions have impact. They don't use intent as a shield, and they don't hide behind excuses or victimhood. They make space for the other person's reality, even if it's uncomfortable. This kind of ownership builds emotional safety in relationships. It tells you, you can come to me when you're hurt. I won't dismiss you. I won't fall apart. I'll face it. And that's rare, because many people, especially those who carry deep shame, can't tell the difference between making a mistake and being a mistake. But maturity means knowing that flaws don't erase your worth. They reveal your humanness, and real connection lives in that humanness. So the next time someone owns their part, clearly, calmly, and with care, pay attention. They're not just being nice. They're showing you the kind of emotional strength that keeps relationships alive when things get hard. Because love isn't built on perfection, it's built on presence. And owning your mess, without crumbling under it, is one of the strongest things a person can do. Emotional maturity isn't just about how much love you can give, it's also about how well you protect your peace. And one of the clearest signs someone has grown into that maturity is their ability to set boundaries. Without guilt, without anger, and without apology. You'll notice it in how they say no, not as rejection, but as an act of self-respect. They don't over-explain. They don't panic if you feel disappointed. They don't twist themselves into emotional pretzels just to keep the peace. Because mature people know that true connection isn't built on endless availability. It's built on honesty. And if they're always saying yes to everyone else, they'll be betraying themselves. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. You'll hear them say things like, "I can't take that on right now. I need some space this weekend. That doesn't work for me, but here's what does." Clear, kind, not defensive, not avoidant, just real. They understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They tell others where the safe crossing points are. They create space for healthier, more sustainable relationships. And because they're not scared of being misunderstood, they don't shrink themselves just to make everyone comfortable. This kind of clarity might feel foreign, especially if you've grown up around people-pleasing or emotional guilt-tripping. But when you experience it, it feels refreshing, like finally breathing clean air. Because this person isn't expecting you to guess what they need. They're telling you, calmly, clearly, confidently. And here's the key. They don't make you feel bad for having boundaries of your own. Mature people respect limits. They honor your no, the same way they expect you to honor theirs. In a world that often rewards overextension, self-sacrifice, and emotional martyrdom, setting boundaries without guilt is an act of quiet rebellion and a sign of someone who's done deep inner work. So when you meet someone who can hold space for their own needs and yours, who doesn't demand access, doesn't punish distance, and doesn't guilt-trip honesty, know this. You found someone who values connection that's rooted in truth. Because healthy love doesn't ask us to give endlessly. It invites us to stay whole while loving fully. And that is where real intimacy begins. We've all been there, caught in the heat of the moment, saying things we don't mean, sending that impulsive message, slamming a door, not because we want to, but because we didn't know what else to do with the wave of feeling crashing through us. But here's the thing. Emotional maturity isn't about not feeling things. It's about what you do with what you feel. Mature people don't pretend they're not angry or hurt or scared. They feel it fully, but instead of letting the emotion run them, they pause, they breathe, they observe it like weather moving through their inner sky. And then they choose a response rather than erupt in a reaction. This isn't suppression. It's not avoidance. It's emotional regulation, one of the most powerful skills anyone can develop. You'll notice it in how they navigate conflict. They don't escalate with shouting or blame. They don't weaponize silence. They don't need to win. What they want is clarity, resolution, repair. You'll hear them say things like, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Can we pause and come back to this? I need a moment to process before I respond. That upset me, but I want to respond calmly." They create emotional space, not tension, and that space makes everyone around them feel safer. Why? Because it's not about controlling the other person. It's about mastering their own inner world. They've likely learned the hard way, through past relationships, therapy, or deep self-reflection, that reaction often causes more harm than the feeling itself. This emotional regulation becomes especially powerful in relationships. It means you're not always walking on eggshells. It means arguments don't become emotional wars. It means when they're upset, they won't destroy the connection just to feel better in the moment. And most importantly, they invite you into that emotional safety too. They don't demand perfection, but they show you how it's possible to feel deeply and respond thoughtfully. In a world full of impulsive noise, this kind of stillness is rare. So when you meet someone who feels the storm but doesn't throw it at you, someone who holds their emotions gently, with care and accountability, you're looking at real strength. That's not weakness. That's wisdom in motion. Here's something no one tells you when you're growing up. Not everything is about you. That sounds harsh at first, but to someone who's emotionally mature, it's a liberating truth. When someone bumps into them on the street, they don't spiral into a story about how people are rude or disrespectful. When a partner is quiet, they don't instantly assume they must be mad at me. When someone forgets to text back, they don't launch into self-blame or resentment. Why? Because emotional maturity allows for a deeper understanding of human complexity. It recognizes that other people's behavior, most of the time, has more to do with them than with you. This kind of person knows how to hold space for multiple truths at once. They can think, "That hurt," and still say, "But maybe it wasn't meant to." They can experience discomfort without immediately making it a reflection of their worth. And that subtle shift in perception, it changes everything. Taking things personally creates emotional turbulence. It makes every minor inconvenience a personal attack. Every silence becomes rejection. Every disagreement becomes a threat. And living that way, it's exhausting. But when someone doesn't take things personally, they move through life with a kind of graceful resilience. They ask questions instead of making accusations. They seek clarity instead of confirmation for their insecurities. They know how to pause and wonder, what else might be going on here? That pause, that moment of stepping back, is emotional mastery. It means they're not always at the mercy of their projections. It means they give people the benefit of the doubt without abandoning their own boundaries. And most importantly, it means they don't let someone else's bad day ruin their inner peace. In relationships, this trait becomes gold. You don't feel like you're walking a tightrope, constantly managing their mood or defending yourself from imagined offenses. You can breathe, you can disagree, you can have a life outside of them because they're not taking your independence as a threat. Emotionally mature people don't assume the world is against them. They assume people are trying their best, and if they're not, it's not always personal. That level of emotional generosity is rare, and it makes love feel safe. Let's be honest, anyone can say sorry, but not everyone knows how to mean it. In emotionally immature relationships, apologies often sound like obligations, quick fixes to avoid discomfort. "I said sorry. What more do you want?" Or worse, they come with a sharp edge. "I'm sorry you feel that way." That's not an apology. That's deflection dressed as humility. But emotionally mature people understand that a real apology isn't about easing guilt. It's about repairing trust. They don't just say, "I'm sorry," to shut the conversation down. They say it to open the door to understanding. And when they say it, it feels real, grounded, humble, safe. Because they're not afraid to look inward, to admit, "I missed something important," or "I hurt you, even if I didn't mean to." They don't rely on their intentions to excuse the impact. They take responsibility, and they don't just apologize with words. They follow it up with changed behavior, because they know that a true sorry doesn't end the conversation. It starts a deeper one. What do you need from me to feel safe again? How can I show you I've learned from this? And that kind of apology doesn't feel like a performance. It feels like an act of love. Emotionally mature people also apologize even when no one's asking them to. They catch their tone. They recognize when they've been distant. They notice when they've been dismissive. And they circle back with softness and clarity, not because they've been guilted into it, but because your emotional well-being matters to them. They don't need to win. They don't need to be right. They need the relationship to feel whole again. And that's what makes it different. Because in a world full of empty apologies and fragile egos, a heartfelt, ego-free "I'm sorry" is one of the rarest, most beautiful signs of emotional maturity. Not just words, but repair, respect, and a love that takes accountability as seriously as it takes affection. Emotional maturity doesn't always look like grand gestures or perfect communication. It often shows up in the quiet things: how someone listens, how they pause before reacting, how they own their mistakes and stay present in discomfort. It's not about being flawless. It's about being aware, willing to grow, able to hold space for more than just your own emotions. And the people who carry that kind of depth, they make relationships feel safe, steady, and quietly extraordinary. So, how many of these signs have you noticed in someone close to you? Or maybe in yourself? Let us know in the comments. Because emotional maturity isn't just something you're born with, it's something you build. And if this video sparked something for you, you might also love our deeper dive into this topic. Why emotional maturity in relationships matters so much. It unpacks the deeper patterns behind conflict, connection, and the emotional skills that truly make love last. Thanks for spending this time with us. We're glad you're here, and we can't wait to keep growing together. And if Psych Bites feels like your kind of space, where love, psychology, and self-awareness meet, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more. Until next time, keep noticing, keep feeling, and keep loving maturely. See you in the next one.